Good day, viewers. Welcome back to Common Ground Humanism with David Oliverio, that is I, where we attempt to build bridges between people with different views with the hope and the intent of making a more peaceful and loving world. Good day here today. I've got a new friend of mine, Isa Winter. Welcome,
Hi,
Isa.
well, thank you very much for this opportunity and having me down.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
So let me briefly explain to you how we met and how I don't know, it's kind of like I've known you for many years.
Right, it is like two common souls. I think because we share such a passion for similar things.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And I think our goal together is to show people that you can have relationships and get along with people.
Absolutely, irregardless of our backgrounds or beliefs, or we're all humans and we're all looking hopefully for the same thing, to get along and
Yes, absolutely.
share this world.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I was scrolling along a meetup probably a couple months ago.
It's been about.
Yeah, and I noticed your meetup page, Common Folk Interfaith Seekers. And I got to tell you, Isa, when I saw that, I just went, wow. Because I thought I was the only one wanting to start something.
Right.
So we contacted each other, and we've been talking, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 different times?
3 times now. We've had a couple video conferences. We had a nice conversation on the phone.
Yeah.
And I feel like you. I feel like we just hit the ground running, like I've known you my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's a good feeling. Now, I want to mention that Isa is a Muslim,
Yes.
and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So, Isa, go ahead and let's start out. Just tell us your story, maybe a little bit of your upbringing,
Okay.
your religious upbringing,
Sure.
and some of your education.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I was raised in the Church of Christ, which is a rather conservative Christian movement, similar to the Baptist Church, but I'd say a little right of them even. And I was raised with that, and very hellfire and brimstone, walking on pins and needles, scared. I like to go back and read the book of Revelations because I love the end of the world and the dragons and the apocalypse and the seven-headed Hydra. But it was terrifying. It was very scary. So after that, I had begun reading some, I'd call interfaith stuff. I got some of my first books on perennial philosophy and Buddhism and Hinduism. And so I was interested in that, but I stayed very much a Christian. And moved away from the Church of Christ and began exploring Lutheran Church, Episcopalian, trying to go back as far as history as I could and maintain some of that Protestant Reformation kind of thing. And ended up going to the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and I was going to go to their seminary, and I had some college under my belt. I did not finish my degree, but I am back in a seminary now. And in the midst of trying to go for that training, a small non-denominational church had kind of wanted me to be their pastor. So I thought, okay, I'll take this. And I did that. And so I was a pastor for about 5 years or so, I'd say. But that wasn't fulfilling towards the end because I was trying to make it more ecumenical, and not everyone was open to that idea. And so I decided to go a different route at that point in time.
Interesting.
That would be Buddhism, where I stayed 25 years. And had an opportunity here in Houston to meet up with venerable abbots and Zen masters, and I'm still friendly and on terms with these people. They're beautiful people, very ecumenically minded themselves. And so I spent 25 years there, and I found that very beneficial because I dismantled the divinity of Jesus. So I had gone from this very fundamentalist idea of a God to Buddhism's, it's often credited as atheistic, but it's more of just a religion without a theism.
Yeah.
But there, Jesus has always been super important to me. Even if I moved away from my devout Christian beliefs as a person, as a humanist, as just a philosopher, a prophet, he was always super important to me. Even my name Isa is Jesus in Arabic.
Oh, I didn't know.
So it's a very common name.
Oh, wow.
But I decided I wanted to, when I decided, you don't have to change your name in Islam. A lot of people are under this impression that I got
was
to
gonna
take a
ask
new
you
name.
that, yeah.
No, most people that I know don't. And but as I saw him as my first sheikh, my first teacher, Jesus, because he's gotten me to this point. Even in Buddhism, he's often accredited as a bodhisattva, a saint that comes down and helps you. So he's seen in all these lives, and it was always important for me to keep him in my life. So when I was in Buddhism, I dismantled his divinity and made him a human again.
Oh, okay.
And then so from that point, it's been a wild journey. I spent 5 years studying with Catholics and became, because my wife was raised Catholic, and went through the 2-year initiation to go into their rite of Christianization for adults. And then I spent a year studying with the Baha'is, and then a year just with the nature religions and some of the like Wicca and stuff like that. And then another year just hitting the Jewish synagogues, Hindu temples, so that I'd have this very well-rounded idea.
Yeah, you've been around.
So I am now back into, I'm fortunate enough to be going to a couple seminaries that I'm online, that I'm affiliated with. And just to increase my own knowledge is pivotal. In Islam, there's not really a clergy. It's just based on your level of knowledge and experience. So then you have sheikhs, you have imams, you have muftis, but this is all just on the amount of knowledge they've gained. And then so yes, we end up back with Isa, Jesus, who a lot of people don't know is mentioned more times in the Quran than Muhammad.
Oh, wow.
Jesus is mentioned 25 times by name, and that doesn't include the number of times he's called the Son of Man, the Christ, the Messiah. And there's even a whole chapter called Mary, his mother.
There's something I want to ask you, because I know some of the viewers, I mean, I as a secular humanist, and by definition, we've discussed this, by definition I'm an atheist, but I don't like using that word because there's so much baggage to it.
It has a lot of negative connotation that it doesn't deserve. Because atheists aren't bad people. They're not. I know a lot of them, and I love them. They're good people. So, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah, some of us, we try to be,
Well, there's angry everybody on every side. There are angry
absolutely.
Christians, angry Muslims, Buddhists, Jews. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's angry people of
Yes.
every persuasion. So I think that's a sad stereotype, because in every belief system, from secular humanists to Islam, they're such a fraction of a minority. But they're the loudest and the most obnoxious, and so they're out there being seen. And then people form those stereotypes of
the visible
that's what
ones
they are. Absolutely.
in each camp are the ones,
Absolutely.
that are usually the angry ones, get the attention, obviously.
Yes.
So I guess the question would be, a lot of my viewers would ask, I'm interviewing a Muslim, and immediately people think, oh my gosh, the scriptures, just like in the Bible.
Right.
You have these Bible verses, or in the Quran you have these verses about killing.
Sure.
You're used to hearing this question, like killing the infidel.
Yes.
Do you all take all that literally, just like Christians? Many Christians I know have grown past that need to take these horrific Old Testament scriptures literally.
Yes, and there are some horrific scriptures in pretty much every religious tradition. Buddhism has this idea of just being this peaceful, loving, and one time I shared with some friends, just read this, it's just their idea of hell, and it'll make the Christian hell look beautiful, and so, but again, when you see some of these things metaphorically, and the notion of violence in Islam, there's the term jihad, which gets used a lot. And the great jihad is the struggle with oneself. It's the struggle against the ego, the nafs. And so the great jihad is to bring ourselves. The lesser jihad is when you go out and have to fight a war. And in Islam, the wars were never offensive. They were always defensive. And there are very strict guidelines with regards to war. You couldn't even destroy a tree. You couldn't take out any civilians, no women, no children. You weren't to loot. You weren't to, burn down the city. And often, Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of his most famous incidents is that he was able to, after being expelled from Mecca and having to take refuge in Medina, he was able to go back into Mecca without raising a sword. The people had so much respect and awe for him. So yes, this notion of the fundamentalists that go out there and make a bad name for people, they're such a small fraction, but when you see them in the news, and like any religion, people say religion, but it's more political in manipulating the religious points of views of others to justify what they're doing, because there is no justification in a war of aggression, only to defend yourself. And that's where it's been said that in Judaism, the Old Testament, it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and then Jesus said, turn the other cheek. And Islam kind of takes that middle way. It says, if there's a need to defend yourself, defend yourself. Otherwise, it's best to turn the other cheek, and you should always go the compassionate, merciful route. But if you had to, you have a right to defend yourself.
Okay, well, that actually makes sense, See, I, as a secular humanist, I have no problem with religious people, what they believe, as long as they're treating other people or outsiders as equals,
exactly.
As respectful citizens, without dehumanizing and taking away their rights. So that's all I really care about.
And I think that's what most people, hopefully, whether they express it or not.
Yeah, yeah, you were making a point about the extremists in each religion. Now, we have those also in the secular world, as you know. We have those, what I would call the angry atheists that are always mocking or attempting to criticize what other people's beliefs are as well. Personally, I think that just adds fuel to the fire of polarization.
It does, and most of that's, I believe, purposeful. I believe that governments and not being conspiratorial here, but I do believe there are motives to keep people pitted against each other, and I do believe the media and other sources have an incentive in doing that and keeping the ratings going, showing the bad guys, and that's not to dismiss. That there are extremists. That's one thing that Muslims we need to face. Is yes, there are extremists. They're the minority, but we need to address it and not pretend like it doesn't happen and fix it.
Right.
So, but at the same time, we don't have the responsibility to explain the actions of a bad apple. A lot of people come to us and want us to defend. And I think that we should have an explanation, and I appreciate the opportunity because that is one of the biggest stereotypes. I remember when I first visited the masjid where I actually became a Muslim, right there next to me was this man, and he was in full, friends forgive me for my Arabic pronunciations and lack thereof, but he was in the full headdress, it was all just stark white, beautiful, beautiful black beard, and he was chanting this beautiful melody, and I got teary because I'm like, this man right next to me has been the villain in every movie I've ever seen since I was a kid. Now they've kind of switched to North Koreans, but it's always, in the movies, it's always the bad guys, the Muslim. So,
well, yeah, I would say also, I agree with you, but also I watch a lot of movies, my wife and I, and if they have a character portraying a non-believer or an atheist, it almost invariably that person will be portrayed as the nihilistic, hopeless, depressed, egocentric, violent.
You're right.
Like the prodigal son rolling in that pig pen.
You're right.
Of nihilism and emptiness, and that bothers me too. So it's just the media, the movie makers, and that's what stereotypes. That's why I hope people like you and I can somehow get people on board and maybe somehow change their minds and get to see the importance of this, because fighting and hating doesn't make a better world.
I think history has shown that doesn't. And when you find examples of times where the world lived in peace, different cultures and times and places, I think it's possible to mold ourselves after the best examples we've seen in the past and shun the worst that we have now.
I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think that maybe it's programmed in our DNA as tribalistic animals, human beings.
Right.
And we kind of have that mentality of us against them, like our close relatives, chimpanzees.
Right.
It's a dominant alpha male. They kill the males of the other chimpanzee troop, steal the females. But I think humans can work our way and think our way out of that.
I do. Evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology both played a very big part in my conversion because I told myself this little cartoon, and it's the silly trope of there's the caveman that hits the woman over the head and drags her back to his cave. Well, eventually some caveman said, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing that. And what sparked that? Did every caveman evolve at the same moment, or did one caveman have something that the other caveman didn't get? And without demeaning the prophets saying they're cavemen, I believe they were maybe the first to have this message that triggered themselves. So like you say, it is in our DNA, but what is it that, we're not conscripted to have wars and violence and disagreement. There is something in us that's evolving now in shows. There's always a woman in a hijab or a Muslim who's the doctor or who's the detective, and I need to pay more attention to the angry atheist and see if I'm seeing a better portrayal of that character. But I do think that we evolve, and I think that that's what the messengers, the prophets, I think they were receiving that revelation, and the first amongst, whether somebody wants to say, well, they just had a good idea. Jesus just said, hey, let's turn the other cheek. And whether that happened because of evolution or he was receiving a message, it took off. And he wasn't the first to say that, absolutely not. But I mean, to promulgate when you have half the world being Christian, it was a pretty powerful message that took root, and half the world being, Muslim, and I'm speaking, loosely here, numbers. But yeah, so I do believe that we have that chimpanzee, and yet the evolution, whether you see it as, I see it as both, guided theistic evolution. If you just see it as biology, or if you see it as, something
Yeah.
that God is doing that.
Yeah, that's where we would probably have differences.
Yeah, but it's happening. We
Yeah,
both
but
agree
it's happening. That's what
Yeah.
I've told you before on
Yeah.
Zoom. We had our talk. To me, as a secular humanist, a lot of Christians would say, I think they would take the scripture, Romans chapter 2, if you remember this, verses 12 through 16, where God's laws are written upon all men
on
and
our
Gentiles,
hearts. Yes.
on our
Yes.
hearts, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So even if a Christian says, well, yes, you as an atheist, David, and your friends, which I have a lot of good atheist friends, and they're really good people,
Right.
you can be good without God too. T double O
Exactly.
also.
Exactly.
Because God put it on your heart. And you know what? That doesn't bother me anymore. What
That
bothers
doesn't,
me
yeah.
are the angry believers that say you cannot be good without God.
Right,
you're
and that's
doomed
just
for hell.
silly.
I
That's
know.
We see it, right? You've
Thank
mentioned
you.
going out and feeding the poor in the morning,
Yeah.
or feeding the poor at any point in time. And what, we can't say that that's good because you don't have Jesus in your heart?
know.
I mean, I'd say you have Jesus in your heart. That's why you're doing
Right,
it. You've just forgotten.
Yeah,
but,
I got you. I got you.
But the fact of the matter is, the proof really is, St. Paul said what? Faith without works is dead. And so, and if you don't have works, then was it James that said, if you
James,
show
yeah,
show me your faith without works,
Faith
and I'll
without
show
works
you my
is-
works
Yeah.
via my faith. And I do. I mean, how can somebody sit there and say, oh, you gave it? I may have mentioned this to you. One of the most beautiful souls, spiritual, loving people I ever knew was my brother-in-law, Rick, who's passed. And he was an atheist, but I don't know that I ever knew anyone more compassionate than that guy. And, I'm sorry. I can't buy that. Yes, I believe everyone that gets the healthy message of Islam presented in a way that's not confusing or demeaning or complicated, they would see the light of it. But you know what their manifestations are going to be? Feeding the poor, helping them. So I just say, we say the sun is Muslim. We say because everything just submits to the will of God. So the sun rises and sets. A dog is Muslim. These are the limbs.
Okay.
Because he does what he's supposed to do.
Oh,
He's just
okay.
made. It's just his nature. So I would say you doing these things,
Okay.
it's just the fruit of the Spirit.
Right, Galatians
Yeah,
chapter
yeah,
5, fruit of
yeah.
the Spirit, love, joy, peace, gentleness,
Right,
faith.
right.
Yeah. So to me, as a secular person, I just say this comes from biology or from nature.
Right.
You guys say it comes from a higher power. Who cares?
I say God made the nature that makes it come.
Exactly, right. But to me, why debate and argue that? As long as
Why
we're
debate
doing
and
it,
argue it?
just
Exactly.
do it and love people.
Exactly.
Where it came from, whatever.
Yeah,
That's my
I think
point.
that's our interfaith notion here.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of that, let's move on. We can go all day about that. Yeah. So, Issa, tell us about your common folk interfaith seekers that you started not long ago.
Absolutely. Well, a conversation between I and a brother Ali at the masjid was that, he gets people asking and people wanting to come, but I'm not here. The term interfaith for me is is us, just two people. I'm not trying to take the Catholic Church and the Islam and all this, and it's just enter. And then the faith is just, I'm not a scholar. I'm not here speaking on behalf of the Muslim world. Anything I say that's a benefit, thank you God, and anything that I don't is my own fault. But interfaith would just be between us, and it's just to dispel some of these myths. But common folk, just because, hey, we're just common people. We're not scholars, we're not priests, we're not rabbis, we're not here to proselytize, it's like this. Hey, so why do you do that? Or I had a beautiful sister ask me the other day, so Good Friday, I see the ashes, what is that? And I said, I was explaining it to her, Palm Sunday and burning the ashes and Jesus Center in Jerusalem. She goes, I always thought that they were like a crematorium, like somebody's ashes from like an urn.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, no, they're not human ashes. But that's the kind of thing we want to dispel. Just over a cup of coffee. That's why I say common folk. And we're all seekers, because I'm not there to pin anybody down. As we've seen, I've gone from Christianity, I studied Buddhism, and I've ended up at this is where I've ended, is Islam is a culmination for me. So I used to take seekers as a bad word. Someone would call me a seeker. I'm like, no, I know the truth. I'm not still looking for anything. I remember being an evangelical Christian and people tell me that.
Yeah.
But seekers now, it's a beautiful thing. I always think of the song Seeker by The Who.
Yeah, I know that. You just gave your
I
age
just
away.
gave my age away.
You're not quite a baby boomer, but you're
no,
getting there.
but I was there on the edge.
You're on
But yeah, so seekers are not a bad thing. So seekers are people of no faith. Nuns is the most popular thing now, N-O-N-E-S.
Right.
People of no faith, people of faith, just to come and share what it means to us over a cup of coffee. Like, oh no, you don't have to wear the hijab or this or that, or just kind of, dispel some of the stuff, or nothing at all. Just have a cup of coffee and talk about your family or poetry, just to be common, normal people, just coming together, having a conversation, not trying to convert people, not trying to shove it down their throat. And then the interfaith is defined what we can do together: feed the poor, make a donation here, a blanket drive, whatever.
Just being human.
Just being human.
And we all do it.
Just being
You know,
human.
if you'll look at all the communities, like I've told you about Oasis.
Right. You
Houston
sure have.
Oasis secular community. We have food drives, we go to the food bank, we go out feed the homeless, we give to charitable foundations, just like Muslims,
Absolutely.
just like Christians. I mean,
Absolutely.
we all do it. It's just part of
Absolutely.
being human to me,
That's
as a
right. I
humanist,
agree.
right? And I think that some people in some of these different communities and belief systems just don't understand that. Or maybe they don't want to see it, or they're closed-minded.
Because it might invalidate their notion that we are the only way to truth life. That, you know, how can you do those good things when you don't have what we have? It's got to, you know, I've even seen people go so far as to say, well, it's the devil making you do those things to deceive us, that, oh, those people are doing it, so we don't need it. People, I mean, you'll go in knots, you know what I mean? So, yeah, we all have those goals. That's our interfaith. Even, you know, I would say you have a belief. You know, faith is another loaded word like atheist. But if you just take faith as a belief, you have a belief in, you know, science, biology, and that this is a good thing to do. I'm not going to sit there and say, take your canned goods home. They don't mix with my, you know, Muslim canned goods for the poor.
Right, which leads me to our agreement on debate versus dialogue.
Absolutely.
Right, and as we've talked about before, dialogue is what we're doing here.
Yes.
Finding the commonalities that we have of humanity.
Absolutely.
And where debate would be, because some people may be watching this, hopefully we get into this debate and confrontation, but we're not about that. No. We see so much of that. But the dialogue is getting to know, listening, and learning why people believe what they do, and not trying to change their mind.
Absolutely.
That's the interesting thing about the difference of debate and dialogue. Yeah,
I agree.
So what about your family, if you don't mind? Are they believers as well?
I'm the only Muslim in the family thus far, inshallah. They are learning, and my kids would be closer. You know, my son presently, you know, identifies as an atheist.
Okay.
They both went to Catholic private school, and I took them everywhere. They have been in mosque. They have been in Hindu temples, Buddhist temples. I've tried to expose them to everything, so they have a very good exposure. My daughter's more agnostic, but leaning towards belief. And my wife is searching. When I turned to Islam, our family was going through, and still is to some degree, some major family tragedies and medical problems and things of that nature. I was angry. My wife was angry. Family was angry. I found peace and comfort and hope and the truth for me in Islam. And they're still searching, but they're so supportive. You know, Ramadan's right around the corner, and they help me decorate. We have meals together, exchange. We talk. They're interested. You talk about the dialogue. Houston United Way Interfaith used to have what they called dinner dialogues. And one family, say it was going to be Judaism, and they would make pockets around town where it would be northwest side, southwest side, and you would go to someone's home. And these weren't rabbis, priests, it was just a Jewish home. And then they would have one other person be a facilitator. I had the blessing of getting to facilitate these. And there would be Sikhs, Jews, Catholics, Muslims, all sitting around just their dining room table.
Wow.
And just, hey, you know, tell us about your Jewish past. So, and these were beautiful dialogues. And we got to do that with Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Jews. And I guess since COVID, maybe, they've gone to just having those conversations like at a big dining hall or something they have downtown. But I have found that Spring Interfaith, out towards my part of town, has tried to get those going. And that's what I want common folk to be. Let's just get together, and I don't want to debate. When I was younger, I'd debate, I would do stupid things, and you know, I don't know. The older I get, and my theory now, my belief is that I should be able to tell you exactly what I believe and I think's best and true without ever having to tear your ideas down. If I can't be positive in my approach and in my explanation without telling you what you have wrong, I don't know. And we used to debate people. I'd find out that, you know, later on that they were kind of, you know, brokenhearted or confused, or I had made them question their faith. And I'm like, my goal wasn't that. It was never to do that.
Right.
But so debate's not my thing. Dialogue, conversing. What do we get out of that? We were just talking about the tribalism. Yeah. You and I aren't going to go to war or fisticuffs, but it's not going to have us. Yeah, no, it's not going to have us leaving here with a better taste in our mouths. Well, I'm a little slower. But it's not going to leave me, you know, I'd much rather leave here going, hey, when are we going to meet up to donate that food to the poor?
Yeah.
Rather than leaving and going, I don't want to, I don't know. The debate, I admire, and I watch some good scholastic debates.
Yeah.
Because I learn from them. You know, if there's going to be a good debate on YouTube, Harvard, and they're, you know, these are two scholars and intellectuals that aren't, I'm like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I enjoy this. But just
Yeah.
like
Yeah, it's just, I came from that background. I really got basically very fed up with that. But, well, let's move along.
Okay.
How can we, you and I and others that are in this area of trying to find common ground with people of different
Right.
worldviews, how do you think that we could spread this message of simply just loving people beyond their beliefs? Like at Oasis, we have 5 core values. Our number 1 core value, my favorite, is people are more important than beliefs. Now, some believers may disagree with that, but because I know that Christians would say God is number 1, then people, and that's okay. But for me, people are the most important thing, above beliefs. I would value a human being. As long as that the belief that someone else holds does not cause harm.
I see what you're saying. Yes.
The no harm principle.
Right.
Right.
Live and let live.
Exactly. So how do you think we could spread this message to Muslims, to Christians, to secular humanists, Buddhists, Hindus?
Well, I think what you're doing here is super important. And I think it's an excellent step because you'll do this, and I'm sure you'll tell people at Oasis or your friends or your viewers, and I'm going to certainly go back and tell the masjid, hey, here's a link, go to his site. And just through people knowing me and watching this, and I think you've planted some really good seeds, and it's what I'm trying to do with the meetup group. It's just we're throwing a line out there and trying to see who wants to. And, you know, it's slow going. You know, I've now had, I think, 5 people, you know, join this meetup
I saw
group.
that,
Yeah, but you know, it's one heart at a time, and people are busy and people have a lot going on. But I think we start this dialogue and then we pick something. You know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If they're already doing a soup drive or something, then you and I go there together. Like, oh, he's here, I'm here. I brought my Christian friend, and what can we do to help? If there's not something going on, then we should find, pick something and go, well, what can we do? A blanket drive, this, that, and then do it in our names because, like you said, yes, I believe, everything stems from, Allah Ta'ala. And that puts this, the seed and the motivation, but we're doing those things. For us, like I say, there's the 5 pillars of Islam, and 2 of them are to give charity. A certain amount of your income, if you make a certain amount of this, you're to donate.
Is it 5% in the temple? Didn't I read that?
I think it's
the Christians are 10%.
Yes.
Tithe.
And don't get me wrong on this, but I believe it's forgive me, my Muslim brothers and sisters, I think it's 2.5% of anything you make over like a certain 10%, which is after like you've like taken care of your zakat is what it's called, and I get a little confused on calculating it. There are calculators, stuff like that, but it is to give the money to the poor.
Yeah.
And then Ramadan is right around the corner. It starts March 9th at sunset, and it's 30 days where we go without food or water from sunrise to sunset.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. So
you're eating.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So your morning meal, is about 5:45. You stop, and then you don't eat or drink until the sun sets. Time change is about to be. It'll be about 6:15. And yes, this is sacrificial, and it's one of the pillars, but it's also to identify with the poor.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to fast for whatever reason, medical reasons, age, you donate that to the poor. You donate the cost of a meal. So. My point being, we both have these ideas of giving to the poor.
Yeah.
Whether it's out of our, what is it, time, talent, or treasure, I believe was how the Christians would always tell me, time, talent, or treasure, because I often wouldn't have the money, but I could give them my time.
Oh, yeah.
Or I could give them my talent, or give them my treasure. So I think it's very similar that we both have this drive to help the poor, the needy, and not even just that, but to spread the message. So, if we engage in other interfaith movements, if I visit Oasis, I'd love to have you come out to the masjid.
Well, I've never been to a mosque. I'd like to come speak.
I'd love to.
Well, my whole goal, I think we've discussed this, I would like to get into churches. I spoke at my parents' memorial service at a Southern Baptist church outside of Austin.
Okay.
And it was a beautiful experience. I was expecting a lot of resistance, but they didn't push at all. They were very kind and loving. My wife and I were the only secular people there. But I would love to get into religious organizations and just somehow sow some seed, and that we could all somehow find those areas of common ground.
Common folk, common ground. I thought
Absolutely.
about that. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No. And I think that just by starting these dialogues, you've done a very critical part. And if you can just come and share the message, we share the message. We're
Well,
almost like missionaries, just
No.
almost missionaries for interfaith.
I would say
cooperation.
ambassadors.
I like ambassador.
Because to me, missionary implies you try to change,
Convert.
convert. I'm not about that.
proselytize.
I don't
no,
want to do that.
No.
I want
gotcha.
to just, I would say more of an ambassador,
I like that.
representative,
I like
or
that.
putting a
Representative.
face on
Representative.
what this belief system is, rather
Dispelling
than
the mess of what
of what the angry ones do.
Yes,
Because there are a lot
yes.
of these angry atheists
There are.
out there, and oh my goodness. And I've seen the angry believers, because
Oh,
I've
of
had
course.
plenty of believers give me their good dose of anger through the years.
Absolutely.
Being
And,
out there.
and there are going to be Muslims that object to us, and there's probably going to be atheists that object to us.
Probably.
And there's going to be, but let them. We're going to do the right thing and dialogue, talk, change the world, help the world.
We sound like
Hippies.
we sound like the old hippies
Yeah.
back in the 60s.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the word. I lost the word I want to use, but idealists.
Yes.
We sound very idealistic, and I guess there's really nothing wrong with that, as long as we're rational as well.
Right.
And we know that, well, could this really happen? We can at least try.
That's right. What is it? Shoot for the moon, and you'll at least be among the stars if
I
you,
like
if you
that.
miss. So I mean, what's the other option? Just don't try.
You don't try. It is easy to hate. It's easy to stay in your own little
It is.
confirmation bias bubble. Your own little
Apathetic.
group.
I can't change anything.
Yeah. Or just hate the other people.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just trying to get along with everybody. You don't have to change your mind, you don't have to change your belief
No.
system, but just change your attitude
Exactly.
toward other people. Just be kind
I
and
think
get along
that's.
with them.
I think that's critical.
It's really simple to me. It sounds simple, but it's really hard. But I think people like us can lead by example, and I know some of my other friends are doing the same thing. We're trying to lead by example. This is how you
Absolutely.
do it. It's
Absolutely.
not that hard. Just get out there and do it.
It is. It is. Just leading by example. I teach middle schoolers, and I expect them to already be at a certain level. And they were saying, yes, well, just model it in your behavior. And I'm like, it's tough. It's tough to expect people to watch you and emulate and follow those models. But people will, people will, I do believe, see us and emulate that. Not to elevate us. I'm saying to emulate. There are plenty of people
absolutely.
that would be inspired.
Yeah.
by what
Well,
we're
that's
doing.
what I hope we
I
can
think
do.
so. I think so.
Well, Issa, we've talked a little bit over 30 minutes. It's been wonderful. And thank you
Absolutely.
so
Thank
much
you so much. Thank you.
for
thank
coming
you.
on. I think I
Thank
owe
you.
you a lunch. We're going to go down to
You
Central
don't know
Market.
anything, but
But
I would enjoy more time together.
we will definitely do that in the future.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, viewers, for
very much.
watching. Yeah. And thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time. So remember to be kind to all and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.